3D printed shoes are already very much a thing. From the Zellerfeld shoes you've probably seen on folks like Stefan from CNC Kitchen or Eric from BigTreeTech, all the way up to the mass-produced Adidas 4D Forward, and many, many more. But there are a few reasons that, at least up until now, you haven't seen me walking around in 3D printed shoes. First, as my unofficial channel slogan goes, we don't buy we build and occasionally fish it out of the trash. In other words, half the fun in 3D printed products is the ability to make them yourself, to your own specs, in your exact own size, in your own colors, and also at your own house. So if I'm gonna buy a $200 shoe, I'll probably just pick up a shoe that leverages the benefits of other technologies and ways that I can't 3D print. But the second reason is actually a more personal one. All of the 3D printed shoe models that I've seen up until now are chonky boys, and I don't mean that in a good way. So a year or so ago, I learned about the health benefits of so-called barefoot shoes and how they improve your balance and your dexterity, they can reduce joint pain and all of that. So imagine my excitement when I saw this short teaser video uploaded to Reddit. Basically, a user on there had designed his own custom 3D printed shoes and then hacked up some very, very unique G-code in Cura to make them actually printable at home with no supports and no fancy printers. So I immediately reached out to this user who, by the way, is named Alessio and was super awesome in helping with this. And I pitched him on my idea, which was basically, what if we could make a barefoot shoe which leveraged all the benefits and capabilities of 3D printing without looking like a space alien clown shoe from the future. Fortunately for me, Alessio was also a barefoot shoe enthusiast, which is probably why his designs were already pretty barefoot-esque, and after a quick Zoom call, we were off to the races. I'm also going to be testing a wide range of materials, from your common, everyday, easy-to-print TPUs to extra funky, flexible blends, and even some hard-to-find, rare, or exotic filaments, just to figure out which ones are the absolute best material for you to print a shoe at home in. Along the way, I will also share some of the lessons I learned and how to get the best results, and also a summary of how well these shoes are actually able to hold up over time. But that's a problem for future Jonathan. For now, let's go make some shoes. Oh, but before we do that, if you're new here, this channel is all about helping you get more out of this amazing hobby that is 3D printing, whether that's product news, tutorials, project ideas. So if you, like me, love 3D printing and you want to learn more about it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. All right, let's get after it. The first step in the process was going to be figuring out which of my printers met the various requirements for printing shoes and just finding the right equipment to make this happen. First and foremost, I needed a printer that had a damn good extruder with a tension spring that I could easily adjust to handle flippity-floppity wet noodle filament. Second, it had to be a printer that I already had a 0.6mm nozzle for and was able to swap. Third, I needed a bed size of at least 250 by 250. Fourth, it had to support uploading custom G-code without freaking out or causing all kinds of issues because I didn't exactly subscribe to the exact parameters and macros that I needed to add before a print. That left me with only 3 of my current printers. Well, actually 4, but the Sovol SV08 is in like a million pieces while I plan a 7 tool head conversion. So unfortunately, I actually kept getting filament jams in my Voron 2.4, which surprised me because before I rebuilt the entire tool head to be on CAN bus, I was able to print super flexible filaments on there. And I think probably the problem was that in my quest to update and add the ERCF v2, which you can check out up here, I actually had to add 2 filament sensors right in the tool head, which add a lot of friction and also 2 extra opportunities for that filament to squirm about and deviate from the path. So instead, I actually ended up printing everything that you're going to see in this entire video on one of 2 different printers. The Sovol SV07 Plus, which has a 300 by 300 bed, a planetary gear extruder. Honestly, it's really great for gripping flexible filaments. Or the Comgro T300, which is the same size, but actually features a 6.5:1 gear ratio on its extruder, which isn't technically a planetary gear drive, but still has a lot of oomph. It might sound like marketing BS, but I actually found this printer to be a flexible material beast. Throughout all of my testing, including with the super duper soft materials that we're gonna cover later in the video, honestly, the T300 didn't miss a beat, and that was very impressive for not a material machine that's designed for flexibles. And because most of these materials are super hygroscopic, meaning they absorb water, I did also make use of Sovel's new SHO2 filament dryer, which has all kinds of easy to use settings like TPU or PLA, and it's generally really pleasant to use. I love how the top is hinged, unlike many other filament dryers that I've used in the past, which makes it super easy to load and unload filament. And I'm really glad that they added grommets on the front that reduce drag on the filament. Fortunately, I did reach out to Sovel/Comgrow, I guess they merged now, and I let them know that 3 of their products literally made this video possible, so they did agree to sponsor it. So if you are looking for a great budget printer that packs a performance punch, ranging from the SV07 to the SV07 Plus or the Comgrow 300, or even the Core XY Monster, the SV08, or if you just need a great affordable filament dryer, wow, longest run-on sentence ever, visit the link in the description. And thanks to Sovel for helping keep the incredibly hot lights on over here. All right, with our hardware selected, it is finally time to get printing. And yes, as you can see, I'm recording this in all different kinds of times and parts and stitching it all together. Deal with it. Normally, when I take on a project, I throw caution to the wind, I dive into it head first, right into the deep end, and inevitably I end up with piles and piles of unfinished projects. So for this one, I decided to start with the easiest possible filament and then work my way up in difficulty. This would allow me to test just which printers and which settings work best, while also saving some of my more exotic and expensive filament for after I had figured it out. Also, retention. That's why for this project, we are going to start off really easy with Filamentum's 92A TPU. 92A is the firmest TPU that I could get my hands on in short notice, and I've actually always found this particular filament to be super high quality and really easy to print. As you can see, this was a really promising first attempt, but I still had a little bit of learning to do. I actually discovered that the way Alessio is hacking the G-code, there is some pretty insane bridging happening on the toes and pretty intense overhangs required. I imagine he designed it this way because with TPU, if you've ever printed with it, you know that supports are almost impossible to remove and they will leave a lot of uncomfortable scarring on the inside of the shoe. So while the Comgrow T300 that I printed this one on does boast a pretty good cooling fan on there, I actually didn't have it on full blast for most of the print because I didn't know that the G-code doesn't activate it by itself. So I had to actually manually or edit the G-code. But learning experience or not, again, this was a solid first proof of concept. And considering that this is the least comfortable, most basic filament on the list of filaments that we're gonna try, this shoe is actually really comfy. It breathes, it flexes, and the only thing that I didn't like is that 42 does seem to be a little bit too big for me. So for our next attempt, I wanted to create the matching left shoe and try to improve on cooling. I originally was going to ask Alessio for like a 41 or a 41.5, but then I remembered this is 3D printing. We don't have to stick to fixed sizes. So I could, for example, experiment with like a 41.5 body, but have a smaller opening where the toes go in, or the other way around, or I could do a 41 and expand things. Honestly, the sky's the limit, and that's one of the cool things about 3D printing. So I decided to print this same material again and try and get that matching shoe, but I wanted to try and improve the cooling. So I did it on the Sovel SV07 Plus, which has this massive auxiliary fan on the back of the gantry. And I thought that it could maybe solve the cooling issue with this filament kind of drooping down. It didn't. The result was actually much worse somehow, which I guess is a testament to the cooling power of the T300. Extrusion, however, was great thanks to the planetary gearbox, and there were no clogs, but we need more cooling. As for the size, 41 actually felt a little bit too small in the toe box, and what's more, These ones, probably because of the improper cooling up here, are actually really uncomfortable and very itchy throughout the entire inside. I wore them around for about an hour before they just became too damn itchy to bear without socks. So I think in addition to more cooling, as expected, we are going to need to move on to more flexible and more difficult to print materials. Okay, cool. We got some lessons learned, onward and upward. All right, let's just pretend you didn't see this and pretend that I recorded this sequentially. So for my next attempt, I'm going to be using a slightly softer TPU, which is PolyMaker's 90A. This is actually the softest TPU that PolyMaker makes, and it has a really cool matte texture, at least on the roll. So while I know that 90A isn't much softer than 92A, I did want to try it out before we move on to the more strange and exotic materials. This time, however, I mean business. I actually have a super powerful air circulation fan, and unlike with the SV08 Plus, which was blowing the air across the print, I've actually pointed the fan at a downward diagonal angle, ensuring that the filament doesn't just slip past the stream of air as it droops out of the extruder and miss out on any of that cooling. So far, it's actually printing in the other room right now, and it's looking pretty good. So let's switch to future Jonathan and see what he thinks about the result. And maybe he's actually had some time to wear it around town and can speak to the longevity of the material. Johnny boy? God, I was so young and naive, wasn't I? Yeah, sorry, past Jonathan, but that didn't work out at all. I think that the fan pointing down actually pushed the uncooled filament down even further as it was cooling and made really just a huge mess of things. Still, I didn't want to disappoint past Jonathan or any of you, so I consulted with Alessio, and it turns out that all along I'd actually been printing the G1 model, which is, it turns out, by far the most challenging of the 3 different models that he gave me. So instead, I decided to print a pair of the Aspis model, which actually prints stitched together and standing up, and that worked out perfectly. However, because of this print orientation, the soles of the Aspis are actually even thinner and with less material than all the other models. So I did decide to put these on and take them around for a spin around town in the 30+ degree heat. By the way, shout out to my wife here for agreeing to be seen in public with me while I was wearing these. Anyways, at first they were a bit itchy and uncomfortable, and Alessio actually does recommend that the Aspis be worn with socks. Plus, do remember that we are still only on 90A TPU, which although it's rated as skin safe by the manufacturer, is not specifically designed for contact with skin. Now, with all that said, I have to say that this result was way better than I thought it was going to be. The shoes are actually pretty dang comfortable, and with socks, I think that they will easily become the lightest and most free-feeling, free-breathing, liberating shoes that you own if you do decide to print them. I did kind of tear the opening while putting them on, so I probably do need to stretch out the toe opening or just cut back the part that I tore a little bit, but once they are on, they really are almost as freeing as actually being barefoot. As for the insulation from the hot pavement, I actually had no problems whatsoever, so I do guess that even 1.5 millimeters of TPU is actually enough to keep you from feeling the heat of the pavement. All right, let's go back to young, foolish Jonathan, but do me a favor, go easy on him. He's just a kid. Having lived through the 90s, the shore hardness 90s, I mean, it was time to get more adventurous. Some of you might remember my exotic filaments video where I tested, among others, the super duper slippery soft furry-esque filament from NinjaTek known as Chinchilla. I keep doing that. This stuff is literally designed to be used on skin, and it is one of the softest, lowest friction materials that you can actually print. So while I am confident that it will be very nice on my feetsies, I actually do wonder if I'm going to slip and slide around town with this stuff. Now, Chinchilla is still notoriously hard to print, and I actually had a bunch of failed prints on the SV07 Plus, even with its planetary gear extruder. Fortunately, the Comgro T300 with its extruder somehow didn't miss a beat, and the end results were actually pretty spectacular. Look at this. This one is unfortunately still the wrong size. I haven't found that Goldilocks yet, but I can honestly say that I would wear this shoe, and it would easily be one of the most comfortable shoes that I own. These are insanely light. They are lighter and much more natural feeling or barefoot feeling than literally any of the other barefoot shoes I own, and I own a lot of them. They flex way more than anything with a rubber sole possibly could, and my toes have lots of room to splay, and because they're 3D printed, they are breathable all the way around, including the bottom and the top, and they don't trap heat anywhere, which is something that no fabric, mesh, or cast rubber sole could even offer. Now, considering that we're experiencing insane heat here in Tel Aviv, I actually really appreciate this feature. So now, let's cut to future Jonathan once again for the post-mortem. Oh, hey again, everybody. So I'm still really liking this shoe, guys. It has nowhere near the amount of traction that a normal rubber shoe sole would have, and it's actually even less than the TPU ones. Like, I can actually slide my foot on the floor even when applying some pressure. Now, with that said, I don't actually know if wet traction or anything like that matters, because with shoes this porous, there's actually no way I'm going to be wearing them on a rainy day, though they could actually be really cool water shoes if they don't slip and slide when they're wet. I actually like this shoe so much in Chinchilla TPE that I ordered a roll of chinchilla from the local retailer Rav Meimad and actually paid out of pocket so that I could print a pair in the proper size. And I think that says a lot considering how pricey this stuff is here in Israel. So yeah, even though I know past Jonathan has other more exotic and even more purpose-built filaments in store for you guys later in the video, I would say that this shoe in this filament is already a massive success. And I'm definitely going to be wearing a pair of these around town if they don't embarrass my wife and children too much. Honestly, this video is going way too well for a TNL video. I mean, where are the epic failures, the expensive mistakes, the questioning of my self-worth and life decisions? Future Jonathan, increase the difficulty. For the next challenge, I decided to research some of the softest, squishiest, most difficult 3D printing filaments out there. And I actually happened once again on Plastics App, which is a local company that specializes in creating super exotic, high quality, custom tailored filament compositions for all kinds of crazy customers. You'd remember them from my 3D printing with literal trash video if any of you had actually watched it. Anywho, Yanir over at Plastics App was kind enough to send me a roll of this squishy-ishy 70A TPU. 70A is actually the lowest shore hardness of any TPU I've ever heard of people 3D printing, and I was honestly dreading trying to print with it. My fear was not misplaced. A wise woman once said, "I don't think you're ready for this jelly." And I wasn't. This 70A TPU is indeed too floopalicious for me, baby. The things this stuff did to my extruder could rightfully be classified as BDSM. I just hope it had consent. Seriously, I've never seen a filament wrap 3 full revolutions around an extruder gear, but this stuff did manage to do it if I went anywhere above 5 millimeters per second. With that said, Yanir did show me a video where they were able to print this stuff on what looks to be a stock FlashForge Adventurer 5M, so I've not given up hope here. I am going to hand this over to my manservant though, future Jonathan, and let's see if he had any luck. Okay, I changed my mind. Screw that guy. Getting this stuff to print was an absolute bear, no matter what printer I put it on. I even actually modified my X1 Carbon to see if somehow that could handle it. It couldn't. By the way, I want to be clear, this is in no way an indictment of Plastics App or their filaments. It's just that most printers are not designed to handle filament this floopy. And yes, that's a technical term, floopy. Eventually, with a lot of guidance from Yanir, I actually hit on the winning formula. So for those of you at home who want to try this out or generally just want to print 70A filament, here's the trick. First, loosen the extruder screw like a lot, to the point where you actually don't think that it'll still be able to grip the filament. Then lower the speed way down. Then lower it some more. Then some more. In the end, I actually printed this filament at 40% of what I was able to print all the other TPUs, as in a staggering 6 millimeters a second print speed and 1.4 cubic millimeters of extrusion per second. At that rate, printing just one shoe takes a cool 18 to 26 hours, and I think I still got a little bit of under extrusion here. I also, it almost goes without saying, switched to printing the easier Tora model, which although it does not print standing up like the Aspis did, it does require much less bridging than the G1 that I was originally trying to print. Because when it takes 18 to 26 hours to print a single shoe and you have a video deadline, you really don't want to get halfway through to discover that it's going to be a huge mess. Unfortunately, it still did turn out a huge mess because the material is absolutely so flexible and so saggy that it's just not possible to have overhangs like the ones that this model needs, which tells me that if I want to print shoes out of 70A material, I really need to use the Aspis instead. It also, I think, underscores that there really is something quite unique about the Chinchilla TPE that I was actually able to print the much more difficult G1 model without issue. But how is it as a shoe? How does this super flexible, floopy 70A TPU compare with the 75A Chinchilla, the latter of which is actually specifically designed for skin contact? Well, I will start off by saying that this material is so incredibly flexible and pleasant to the touch. Of all the materials that I'm talking about in this video, it gives you the least resistance when you're bending your toes, leading to the absolute highest degree of freedom and natural barefoot feel. I'll also add that although the inside actually turned out pretty sloppy in terms of spikes and stringing, the material is so soft that it doesn't actually bother your feet at all, even without socks. So if these had turned out decent looking on the bridging, I probably would wear them. One other thing that surprised me was the grippiness. TPU is typically not known for its grippiness, although it's flexible, and there are actually filaments out there made with real rubber fibers to try to combat this. But this filament grips to the floor like crazy. It's actually kind of a weird sensation even, having this much traction with your shoes. So while because of the way this printed out, I probably won't be trying to print the other side out of this particular material, I am really excited to try and use this TPU in future applications where I need not just flexibility, but also grippiness, because I've literally never tried any other filament that sticks so nicely to smooth surfaces. And I'm sure you can think of all kinds of really cool applications that could take advantage of this friction. One way or another, you will be seeing much more of this filament on the channel because 2 of the 7 tool heads that I'm currently putting on my Sovol SV08 tool changer are actually going to be using Bondtech LGX extruder gears, which are specifically designed for super flexible materials. And judging by what designer Nadir has been able to print with his version of this tool head, I'm confident that I'll have much more success with this filament on those extruders. Plus, I think it might be really cool in a future video to print the sole out of PIBA and then the top of the shoe with TPU 70A or Chinchilla, assuming those filaments stick together. So make sure you're subscribed if you actually want to see that. So while we were chatting, Yanir from Plastics App actually also connected me to another local company right here in Tel Aviv that they had worked with in the past called Balena. As it turns out, Balena actually already works directly with Vivo Barefoot, which is the shoe company that inspired this entire video idea. Wait a minute. You're telling me that Vivo Barefoot already has a 3D printed shoe that they developed in collaboration with a company literally down the street from me, and I could have just... God, I need to get out more. Anyways, Balena is going to be eventually sending over a roll of their BioCir Circle R Flex 3D filament, which apparently is a bio-based, flexible, durable, and fully compostable, so I guess I won't be leaving these shoes out in the garden anytime soon, composite. Now this sounds pretty awesome, but I am a bit surprised to see that it's actually rated as 80A, and it's designed to be easily processed on a Prusa, Artillery, and other direct drive 3D printers. From what I've been told, nothing is actually easy to process on an but I digress. I'm actually still waiting for the roll to arrive, so you know what that means.
Hey, future Jonathan, get to work.
What a jerk, am I right? In any case, this filament was at first another absolute nightmare to print, and I spent a good couple of hours clogging and then unclogging the extruder, unsure of just how they were able to get it to print on a basic Prusa machine. Fortunately, it was along about this time that I figured out the loosened extruder / ultra low speeds trick. Yes, kill me, I didn't print these in the order that they actually appear in the video, and I finally did get things working properly. And once I did, wow. I have to say, honestly, that this is a really interesting filament. It is much stickier with a higher degree of friction than both the high shore hardness TPUs and the Chinchilla TPEs, though still doesn't quite have as much friction as the 70A, which surprised me. I will say that you definitely feel traction on the ground, even when you're walking around on slick hardwood floors. Heck, it actually has even better traction on my dusty shop floor than my rubber-soled Vivo barefoot shoes, which blew my mind. But it's not nearly as soft and smooth on the skin, and the top of the shoe doesn't flex nearly as nicely and easily as the 70A or 75A materials did, and that makes this feel a little bit less like a real barefoot shoe. Now, I have to assume that since this is actually designed for shoes by Balena, it is going to be much more durable and have better longevity than any of the other materials on this list. And I should point out that when I lowered the speed to 50%, I did forget to double the amount of time on the filament dryer, so the filament started soaking up moisture halfway through the print. And come to think of it, I'm actually not sure that I remembered to turn on the cooling fan, which, as I mentioned before, you have to do manually with this G-code. So all this is to say that the inside of the shoe is pretty rough and spiky, but since it's so much softer than the 92 TPU was, it's actually still pretty bearable without socks. But yeah, I'm definitely going to try to smooth it out with a heat gun right after I record this. And I do want to print the next one with the dryer running the entire time and proper cooling settings. So what's my verdict? Would I actually wear 3D printed shoes, and which material wins out for actually printing them? Well, for the social reasons of them looking kind of weird, I don't think that these are going to replace my store-bought shoes anytime for, day-to-day usage. But I can definitely see myself wearing these around the studio or even around town on kind of quick errands, especially with how hot it is getting these days where I live. And these are going to make absolute killer beach shoes as well. And make no doubt about it, chances are if you see me at any kind of maker or 3D printing event, I'm going to be wearing these because you guys will get it and people won't think that I'm wearing socks around town like a homeless person. At just a few grams of material, these are significantly cheaper, lighter, and in some cases actually more comfortable than store-bought barefoot shoe alternatives, which I think is pretty insane considering I printed them myself. As for which material I recommend, I honestly have to say that it was the only material on this list that I didn't get for free from the only company on the list that I actually don't have any working relationship with that truly captured my heart, or rather, my feet. And that was the Chinchilla TPE. Though it's not perfect, for example, with the slight traction issues that I brought up before, this material was far and away the most comfortable on my feet, the easiest to get a good finish inside and out that didn't scratch or itch, and I think you'll agree that it looks the absolute best due to its ability to actually remain matte even after printing it. So while I think that the Balena is probably going to last longer and has significant environmental benefits in that it can be composted, and the 70A feels just amazing with how flexible it is on the top, I'd say that if you're going to try this project out at home, I'd probably skip straight to the Chinchilla, and I'll leave a link in the description where you can pick up a roll yourself.